Good evening and welcome to the Sue and Charles Cobb Distinguished Leaders Lecture Series. My name is Paul A. Pavlou, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as Dean of the Miami Herbert Business School here at the University of Miami. We're very honored to have this incredible event that we're able to bring such distinguished leaders to talk about timely topics. And we're indebted to the generosity of Sue and Charles Cobb, ambassadors of the United States, for their amazing support for multiple years. Let me talk a little bit about our distinguished ambassadors here. So Ambassador Sue M. Cobb is president of the Cobb Family Foundation and principal of Cobb Partners, a former ambassador to Jamaica, Secretary of State of Florida, CEO of Florida Lottery, partner at Greenberg Torek Law Firm, and multi-year member and 3 times chair of the Miami Federal Reserve. She's also trustee of the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the Council of American Ambassadors, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and on the Advisory Council of the Association of Diplomatic Studies and Training. She's married to Ambassador Chuck Cobb, who I'll introduce in a second and ask him to come to the podium, U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce and Ambassador to Iceland. Sue Cobb, who is here with us today. Sue has been an officer and director of several public, private, and charitable boards and has received numerous awards, including national honors from both Jamaica and Iceland. The U.S. Department of State awards the Sue M. Cobb Award annually to the individual selected in worldwide competition as the most outstanding non-career U.S. ambassador. A graduate of Stanford University and the University of Miami School of Law, and a skilled alpine skier and high-altitude climber, she has scaled mountains worldwide and published The Edge of Everest, a chronicle of her travels across China and Tibet, and her climb all the way up to the mountain Everest. That's quite impressive, Sue. We are honored to have you here. Ambassador Charles E. Cobb was the U.S. ambassador to Iceland during the George H.W. Bush administration. During the Reagan administration, he served as Undersecretary and Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Commerce. In the 1950s, he served as an officer in the U.S. Navy. Florida Governor Jeb Bush appointed Ambassador Cobb as chair of Florida FTAA and Gateway Florida, which had the responsibility for Florida's international trade agenda. Ambassador Cobb created the Charles E. Cobb Award for Initiative and Success in Trade Development within the U.S. Department of State that awards $10,000 annually to the career ambassador who best leads U.S. trade policy. There's more here. So, Ambassador Cobb is the CEO and Senior Managing Director of Cobb Partners, an investment firm. Cobb was the CEO of several companies and has served on their boards and other publicly traded competitions, Arvida, Penn Central, Walt Disney, and others. Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, Eisenhower Fellowships, Council of American Ambassadors, and many others. Other civic boards and members include American Academy of Diplomacy, the American Scandinavian Foundation, Council of Foreign Relations, and several others. So in the spirit of getting to our program, because there's an amazing list of accomplishments here, Ambassador, I would say one thing that is practical and relevant. Sue and Charles have been married for 65 years, and they have 2 sons and 7 grandchildren. With that, I'd like to ask Ambassador Cobb to come here to introduce our distinguished lecturer. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Dean. A little long, but thank you very much.
Wait, don't make so much achievements.
So, thank all of you for coming. We really appreciate your attendance at these events. As you might have read in the write-up, we really have been fortunate to have America's top leaders come here at the University of Miami and give, in general, Alexander is clearly one of those, but it's included 4 cabinet officers: former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, former Secretary of Defense Cap Weinberger, and a couple Secretaries of Commerce. We've had, along with the general, 2 other 4-star admirals. We had the commissioner of the MBA. We've had maybe 7 or 8 top CEOs, and just number of interesting leaders. The top 2 hedge funds, Henry Kravitz and Steve Schwartzman, and who've shared really interesting leadership, and I think the students and all of us alums and trustees and others have just gained so much from. And Keith Alexander clearly is one of those. He, as many of you know, has an incredibly distinguished career. As President Obama appointed him as the commander of the Cyber Command, to be the very first commander of cyber for the United States. And President Bush participated in that. And he also then ran the National Security Agency and was the chief of the Central Security Service. And then early in his career had numerous roles in the Army. In the early 2000s, he was in charge of all security for the Army and cybersecurity and intellectual. He had 10,700 Army personnel that were all over the government, from the National Security Agency to each of the other 10 commands reporting to him. And he really had through this career, had so many awards, 20 of them. And like the dean spared you from all our awards, we're going to spare you from, but you ought to see in his uniform. Boy, it's full from here to here from all those awards, and it's really impressive. Now, he did have one dark day, however, in this great career, like many of us on September 11th, when these terrorists somehow weren't detected by those 10,700 workers for Keith Alexander, and did the terrible work they did. And but he did something about that, and hopefully he'll share that with us today, that security has been terrific since in all these leadership roles that he's had. In addition to this great military career, he's also been in business. He's been a board member, a shareholder, CEO of several different important businesses. He's on the board of directors of Amazon, and a very active board member and participant there. And hopefully he might share some of that with us. An incredible education. He got his bachelor's degree at West Point, where he joined a very distinguished class, where there were, along with the general, there were 3 other 4-star generals, including General Matthias. And he then went on and got 4 masters. He got an MBA at Boston University, and then got additional ones in cybersecurity and intelligence and physics and words that I can't even pronounce, of other expertise that he gained. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's, one last thing. I see Shelley Berg back there, and so Shelley and General Alexander and I are members of a social club. And so Shelley has used his great education to help Keith Alexander become a great guitar player. So you ought to hear the duo of Shelley at the piano and Keith on the guitar, and it's really a great combination. So ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this is one hell of a guy, one great friend, one of America's great leaders,
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
So first, they give out awards for just being in the service. That's what, 40 years, you get an award every 2 years. I will say, I do play the guitar with Shelley Bird. Pretty soon they'll let me turn on the amplifier, but it's going to take a while. It was an amazing time to be in the government, to be in the Army. I'm going to take us back to 2005 and talk about cyber and what's going on in our country, and then we'll go into depth what that means for all of you as we go forward. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to try to condense this to about 15, 20 minutes so that we can have questions and answers, and I will be interrogated by ambassador and dean. It sounds like one of the Chevy Chase movies, I think, My Spy. Okay, Spies Like Us. 2005, I took over the National Security Agency. What an amazing job that was. It really is. It's, there's so many things that goes on that we can't talk about. Everybody goes, well, what do you do? And the answer is, NSA produces about 70 to 75% of our nation's intelligence. A lot of that comes from cyber. A lot of that helped us take down hundreds of terrorists. In 2006, we put a system into Iraq that allowed us to increase the speed from taking 16 hours to get information to the frontline troops to 1 minute, identifying the location of terrorists and adversaries, because our troops were taking increased casualties. End of 2006, you'll see it going up. 2007, we helped take down 3,950 bad guys, 1 year. Broke the back of the resistance. Dave Petraeus put it in his book. When you look at what's going on in those eras, you can see the speed of communications, the way things are changing. 2008. This is a true story. I'm going to give it to you the way it kind of happens, because you have to have a sense of humor. Our guys say, we found some bad stuff in a foreign area. So remember, our NSA looks external. We collect information to secure our country, know the threats, provide that to the National Security Council, the President, the Defense Department, and the combatant commands. But this was something from the Secretary's network. And I said, that probably shouldn't be there. And they go, that's why you're the director. You picked right up on that, sir. We're proud of you. So I said, well, we need to talk to them. It took us 5 days to get access to their network because they didn't allow the National Security Agency to come in. That Friday, our team went in. They found 1,400 pieces of malware. Mauricio will tell you that's not good. Okay, that's true. 1,400 pieces of malware in a classified network is known as not good. I called up Secretary Gates. I called up Chairman Mike Mullen and said, here's what's going on. And of course, that's a Friday night, just to make their weekend really good. This is in October. There goes football. So I turned around. We had 5 guys in the room, not the hamburger guys. These were 5 people in cyber. And I said, so we found this problem. We need to fix it. What are we going to do? Now, my job as the director is not to solve it. It's to say, how long will it take? And the answer was, how long will this take? Well, it's a Friday night. I said, well, so what time tomorrow can we have this done? 2 p.m. Saturday, they put a system in that solved the problem. Nobody else in the world could have done that, period. The decryption, the collection, all of that. I say that because Monday morning, when all the combatant commanders come in, Secretary Gates is there, and these guys are saying, true story, we need to count the number of systems we have. I thought it was virtual. Everything you had on Friday, you got on Monday. Oh no, we're going to make people count the number of computers they have every week. Imagine an Army person, myself, counting to 7 million every week and getting the same number. The probability of that is 0. I learned that in probability and statistics. So I told him, I said, we've solved that problem. You guys can go ahead and do that, but that's not the issue. Here's the issue. Secretary Gates is watching all of this, and then I found out they have a motto in the Defense Department. No good deed goes unpunished. He called up and he said, we really want you to stay longer. It was a 3-year assignment. I'm already into my 4th year. And he said, we'd like you to stay longer. Here's what we're going to do. You already run the nation's offense in cyber. We're going to give you the defense and set up a command. We want you to fix all of that and put it all together. President Bush is on board, so we'll get that started. I got that memorandum. So the event was on 24 October that we discovered it. 11 November, I get this memorandum. And you all know 11 November is Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. Here's your new jobs. Same paycheck. That's the start of Cyber Command. And I put that on the table because that changes warfare. I had the great privilege and honor to sit in a number of national security meetings. I can't go into all the good stuff that you'd really want to hear about, but the key thing was cyber is going to become warfare. We don't want cyber to be warfare. My comment is, that's too late. That horse has left the barn. It already is warfare, and it's going to get worse, and we need to be ready. We set that up, and the second part was, so what do you need? So we laid out, we needed about 10,000 people. It's a good number, 10,700, 10,000. And everyone says, you can't ask for that many. And I said, no, we ask for what we need. And then if they can't get us, we have that on record. That's where we need to get to. We got everybody we needed. We set up 64 defensive teams. We set up 40 offensive teams globally. We set up 25 analytic teams. And I've heard some in government say, it's a fat guy sitting on a bed typing in. These teams were 64 people, military precision, that did things that everybody said was impossible. So I put that on the table. Everybody said it was impossible. I can remember talking to the president. I said, we can do A. And he said, I talked to another agency across the river. They said, that's impossible. I said, it may be impossible, but we can do that. And we did. So the second part that you need to understand with all that was going on in that, this is in the 2008, 9, 10 time frame, is how do you stop a war between Israel and Iran? How do you get the terrorist? One of our major functions. How do you find a terrorist? How do you track them? How do you get the capture kill teams to go after them? How do we keep all of this going? How do we protect our elections? I was in the job till 2014. I was actually asked to stay 2 more years, but the thought was, there was a guy who stayed in the Navy for 30-some years, the nuclear Navy, and they said, he became the father. He was there for 34 years. I thought, whoa, 34 years. The reality is, if you stay too long, some of the great people behind you are going to miss out. The best thing I ever did was leave then, and then General Paul Nakasone would come 4 years later and become the director, and was one of the best that we've ever had. Having said that, what does that mean and where are we now? So the election securities became one of the key issues. When Paul took over in 2018, we had a series of issues with describing how you go after bad guys in their territory and not make it sound bad for Congress. Paul came up with a great idea. We'll defend forward. Right? That means we'll be in their networks. If they do something, we'll know about it and be able to help protect this country. Defend forward. 2018, 2020, 2022, and now in 24, those folks defend forward and know when people are attacking into our networks and get it going. But it's not enough. It's not enough. I want to drop back and say, why is it not enough? We're a nation of laws. Everything that NSA does, everything that Cyber Command does, is done with legal authorization. If somebody says we can't do something, we have to stop. Our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, don't have those same issues. So when you think about them attacking us, or going and doing disinformation, or capturing or doing something to our systems, or hacking into a school and holding it for ransom, like Lockbit and others, their government is complicit in this. Folks that were in some of these folks, I know factually that the people that do ransomware work in the Chinese government some a day and have a moonlighting job. Not with Bruce Willis, but a moonlighting job at night. Well, that's for more of the older people like me. But when you think about it, they get money. They get paid a lot more doing their night job than they do in their day job. They just give some of it back to the government. Lockbit was taken down this spring, was one of the big ransomware companies. The people involved, one of them worked for the FSB, the Russian intel service, their old KGB. So we're facing an enemy, an adversary, who daytime comes after us this way and nighttime comes after us this way. I want to talk a little bit about what's that mean for us? Where is this going to end? How good are we and what's our future? We are the best in the world in this area. I am convinced of that. But it's also factual that we have the biggest glass house in the world. We do more on the networks. We're an innovation nation. We have more intellectual property that adversaries are stealing. In 2005, my first testimony to Congress was, it's the greatest transfer of wealth in history. Over $500 billion a year is stolen by China against us. Think of that. Add that up. That's trillions of dollars over the last 19 years. That's our best secrets. That's our intellectual property. That's our competitive edge in things like AI. They steal it. We are prohibited from going after commercial sectors in the military. We go after government and other agencies and those that are doing attacks. But we can see what they take. And so when you hear about Columbia-class submarine getting hacked, or the F-22, or the Joint Strike Fighter, chances are NSA, Cyber Command, FBI, and the CISA folks have all worked together to identify that and let somebody know that's happened. But it's too late. China's got it. We're losing. And we've got to change the way we think about this. And I think it's important for you to understand what's going on right now, this year. I'm not talking football, but Army's 7-0. So if we probably didn't want to know that, but it's the first time since 90s for 30 years. Yeah, I'm surprised too. So let's stop there. It's been published that we're seeing attacks and exploits by China into critical infrastructure, more visible now than ever before. Publicly pushed out by CISA, the Cybersecurity and Information security agency under DHS that works with FBI, NSA, and Cyber Command. So they all work together. And they said, in preparation for a potential attack on Taiwan, China uses cyber as an element of warfare. Their intent is to have access across a wide spectrum and to cause as much pandemonium if they decide to attack Taiwan to keep us occupied here, what's going on. Imagine if we shut down pipelines, we shut down pharmaceutical capability and movement of drugs, we shut down the internet, and the last thing you want to shut down is power, because once you shut that down, nobody can get in, they can't get in either. So they're going to have a process for doing that. They're fighting. Now the good news is FBI has jurisdiction in the US. They can get Cyber Command and NSA to help them under FBI authorities. There is an awful lot of work right now trying to kick them out. Volt Typhoon is the one. Mauricio and company can give you more facts on that. And then Salt Typhoon is the one that they just published about going after the internet. This is ongoing right now. It is a prelude to what they are preparing. If they decide to move to war, they will be ready. And they're doing it in such a way that they know, we know. You know? I had to work that in. Ambassador Cobb said you got to work that one in. So they know we know about this, and they don't care. They're sending a message, a strategic message saying, if you do A, we're going to do B. And Taiwan is China. So that's that one. Russia. Russia has used this, and there have been over 3,000 engagements between Russian, US, NATO cyber units on the Ukraine war. Over 3,000 engagements. You don't hear about it, but it's the quiet battle that's going on the networks right now. And they try to get into infrastructure, energy, all of these things. And I believe this is the way that Putin, Xi Jinping, Iran, North Korea can challenge us as a nation. I want to end on, because I know I'm supposed to not talk too long, I want to end on one thing, AI. We talked a little bit about AI, so I want to give you this because AI accelerates everything we just talked about. It's interesting, Secretary Gates asked me, what about AI in 2008? And the answer was, here's what's going to happen. They're going to use AI on the offense. What does that mean? They'll scan networks at network speed. They'll have all sets of vulnerabilities to go after, and they'll start automating the process to attack, exploit, and have significant impact. We have to have AI on the defense to combat that. It can't be it takes us 2 minutes to do something, it takes them 30 milliseconds to do. AI is going to change that. And AI is going to accelerate. There is a great paper for you all to read. I don't know if it's yet hit the business school, but it's called Situational Awareness by Leopold Aschenbrenner. I recommend you read that because he talks about the speed of change that AI will bring over the next 5 years. It's extraordinary. Even if he's off by a few years, it's extraordinary. And it means our way of life has to change. I promised Ambassador Cobb I would give a couple of thoughts about what we have to do in cyber. So I'm going to approach this from my military background. We treat cyber and the defend of cyber companies, institutions, and stuff as your responsibility. And if you get hacked, please let us know in 4 days or so. And you're thinking, but that hack's going at network speed. That doesn't make sense. Imagine, and I've used this, imagine if this was a missile coming in. and it's going to come in, and we're looking, is it going to hit a government institution? Nope, let it go. Boom. And now they have 4 days. They better tell us they got hit by a missile. In cyber, that's the way we work. Turn that around. Think of all the work that you're doing here. Tremendous amount of insights of what's coming at you. How do we take and build a radar system for cyber so we can see attacks against our country, share that with the government, so those that can respond have that information? Cyber is a joint public-private partnership and responsibility. If we're going to defend this country, we have to work together in cyber in ways we never thought of, and the ways we do right now for air defense and missile defense. All the radars work together. We don't say, well, don't have those government radars work with those commercial radars. We wouldn't fly if it was like that. You wouldn't use your private planes for things like that. We would have said, no, it's too dangerous. But that's what we do in cyber. We need to think about how we bring together our country, how we work with allies to take on that problem set. That's the change we need to have if we're going to be successful in this next war that will certainly include cyber as the first stage. So I'll end it there, Ambassador, and so thank you, folks.
So, Dean, am I mic'd?
Yes, it should be mic'd, so the interrogation begins now.
Good.
The
So,
interrogation.
The white light is on.
General Alexander, great comments. A high percentage, I think, of your comments were on the defense side, which appropriate. So my question is more offensive. So what does our government do? In other words, you use the hypothetical when China does this, we're going to do this, or vice versa. You didn't talk about C, which is going to be our offensive, take out their utility system. In other words, where are we offensively from a military point of view, and where are we from a business point of view? Now, so let's get a little bit more on the commercial side. And you talk defensive, but
Yeah, so the offense, the 40 offensive teams that we have are focused on certain regions, Russia, China, Iran, and executing our war plans. In doing that, you would, if you just think about how we do war plans, it is what are the military objectives that we'd want to do? And the question is, can cyber do any of that? And the answer is yes. Can you help impact communications, energy, everything that China's trying to do to us? We would be prepared and held responsible for doing for our country as part of a war plan. There's also another piece of this, which is going after bad guys. I'll think of terrorists. I'll give you, without giving you the names, but I've been in an operation. Okay, I was in charge. I didn't actually do any work, but I provided the authorization for them to do things that would hold me accountable, not them. And imagine a bad guy that we want to grab information from, do things to his computer, and keep him preoccupied by messing with him over here. It's like Bright Star, something happened, he's over there, we're on his machine doing things to help us get access to a terrorist network successfully. It is, when you think about some of the Mission Impossible things that you see on TV, it's much better. We had a war room with the big screens, the actual going after Jessica Buchanan, who was held hostage by Somali pirates. Our troops would go in, we provide cover and oversight. And we do things to make sure that those troops are safe. When communications pop up, we say, nope, they're 50 miles to the north, keep going. We're able to help them do that. We see what happens. I actually met Jessica Buchanan. That was one of the big successes last fall. So there are things that we do. We're the best in the world in that area, I think. But ours is focused militarily and against military functions. We don't go after, pick a company in China, Baidu, we don't go after their intellectual property and share it with our companies. For our commercial side, what we really have to do is, for a university, for a company to be protected, if you can only defend, you lose. What we have to be able to do is to tell the government somebody's trying to get into this network, and they have to be able to see what that means and with respect to other companies that are seeing a similar thing and take action. Secretary Gates asked me, how often are you successful on the offense? This is before I got the defense. And I thought, I don't want to brag, 100%. We always get in. Those are classified, secured networks that the best in the world have secured. We always got in. We're not the only smart people. Others have capabilities that now match what we had 10 years ago. And so, for the defense to be viable, it has to work with the offense. We have to know a missile is coming in so somebody can stop it and see who's trying to get in and take some kind of action.
So my second question related to Amazon. Obviously, it is cutting edge cyber from a defensive point of view. Can you, without divulging confidentiality, tell us about your learning experience at Amazon, the lessons from that, but maybe we'll focus on cyber.
Yeah, well, first, it's an amazing company. It really is. The Jeff Bezos focus on the customer. Our focus is on the customer. He is so good at that and what he does. And, you know, he's now the chairman, but he is 100% engaged. It's one of the most amazing things. My job, I thought they brought me in for my good looks. They said, no, that ain't even close.
That's what we thought, actually. Yes.
That's what we thought. They said, no, dump that out. I lead the security committee, which is cyber and everything else. And they put a lot of effort into securing their networks. Think the cloud. I think it's the best secured right now in the world. But you can't rest there. You got to keep going, right, Mauricio? You got to keep improving it. You got to keep working on it. They're building Kuiper, putting satellites up, military targets. And then they have all this customer data. I know this because my wife, I think that's why I was actually brought in. My wife is the biggest user of Amazon. I have 16 grandchildren, and she feels incumbent to buy all our money on them through Amazon. And they do everything they can. They check it. They are very precise on how they go after it and what they do. It's amazing to see. And, oh, by the way, he's got a great sense of humor. And so it's a privilege and honor. I've learned a lot. I wish I had known that 5 years ago. That would have helped me in business. His business acumen is amazing.
So a question I'd like to ask about this public-private, and since you actually are on the private sector as board of directors of Amazon, how much Amazon feels comfortable sharing with the government in terms of cyber attacks against Amazon? And the next question I'd like to get a kind of budget-wise, kind of, I don't know if you can divulge the information. What is the Amazon budget on cybersecurity, and what is the government? Or even can tell us not exact numbers, like what is the China budget? And we know the military budget of China, the US, we know that the ratios. So, can we share that? Are they available?
Well, I
get
think,
a sense of what's happening in the private, public sector, other countries?
Yeah, I think the budgets of NSA and Cyber Command combined are probably $15 to $20 billion.
Yes.
Amazon spends more in CapEx now than the US government, building out data centers, right? I mean, just building out data centers so they can handle all the AI that's coming. And the big problem is chips and energy. So they spend a lot of time on that. In fact, it was publicly announced that they're helping X-Energy produce some of the small modular reactors for nuclear. And others are joining in so that we'll have that. In the meantime, China's racing down that road with their nuclear power and doing it globally. Not to our standards, but they're putting a lot of power in. You can see it going in UAE and elsewhere. So power will generate the data centers that will generate the AI that we need to use. Amazon, I don't know what they spend. They never break it out like that on here's so much for this, but they have a few thousand people working cyber.
What is a comparable in China, Russia? Do you have any idea how much they spend, how many people they have, and how will we compete on that? That was my question about military versus cyber in this, at least on the government level.
So China has an order of magnitude more people in cyber than we do. I mean, they have over 100 groups. They have over 100,000 people that are working in these areas. Russia, much less. So the SVR, FSB, and some of their criminal groups, but the numbers are far less than us. Okay. The difference that helps make this competitive for us is technology. And what NSA came out of World War II from Enigma. And so all the things that go into cryptology, mathematics, computers, all of that is the foundation for NSA. The best, the smartest, and many of them are autistic, brilliant people that can solve math things that we didn't even know was a math problem. I've talked to some of these folks, and they've gotten awards for solving classified math. That keeps us ahead. My concern is as we accelerate, as we start to fall behind because of the theft of intellectual property. 90+% of our intellectual property is in the commercial sector. All our defense industrial base, over 200,000 companies, are in the commercial sector. And they're getting hammered by China and Russia. And we're not doing a good enough job defending them.
So, kind of a question about Amazon, like in terms of the defending kind of its own intellectual property and the collaboration with government. How does it work? I mean, since you know both organizations, how is the connection there?
So, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has a public-private partnership for all the cyber companies, and Amazon participates in that. NSA, Cyber Command, CIA, FBI can all come in there, and everybody meets there, and they can share information, and they do. And they share information back and forth, and that's the key. But that's one company, and then there's multiple companies, and when you think about all the cybersecurity companies that are doing it, that's great. What about all the healthcare? What about all the energy? What about all the critical infrastructure? Where and how do you share that data? So we put together a thing for the defense industrial base where we're starting to pull all their stuff together, create a radar system for all of them. Then share it with the government at network speed so they can see where and how people are trying to come in. A lot of work needs to be done, and to be honest, it goes way too slow. I don't think people realize the importance of what China has done in the past 10 months, coming after critical infrastructure. That's a huge message. We don't care if you know we're going after your critical infrastructure. We're in it. We're living off the land. You can knock us out of A, we'll get into B, but we're going to be there and we'll cause problems. You see this happening on Hamas and other things and disinformation. It tears our country apart. Those things are issues that we have to solve.
Ambassador,
Dean,
yes.
I see our President, Joe Echeverria, is here, and I think he should answer the first question from our audience if he has one.
I think Deloitte is great.
So first, thank you for joining us. Quick question for you. Now that you're in the private sector, how would you compare your experiences in public versus private in terms of your subject matter expertise?
Well, it sure was great being in the thick of all the sensitive operations we have going on globally and having a key role in that. That was amazing. Something I still get insights to, but I no longer help run, brief, and help steer. So knowing that, now when you step back, you think there's a war going on over here and there's a lot going on. And it's like, we're okay, everything's okay until it's not okay. It's like jumping out of an airplane, you're good until you hit the ground. And this is my concern. We have a lot of bad things going on. And I think we don't realize it. And when you talk to people, they go, yeah, we ought to do something about that. Oh, we got a football game this weekend. We're going to be doing some things. And I think it's going to be a national crisis. And what we don't want is to have a Pearl Harbor in cyberspace. But if a few events were to take place that gave Xi Jinping the incentive to go after Taiwan, we know factually they will go after our critical infrastructure to keep us from stopping them. We're not ready for that. And so in the government, the nice part is, you could tell the president, the Secretary of Defense, here's what's going on, here's why, here's what we know. You give them the classified documents, they say, okay. I know that they've gotten some of that. I don't think they have the solution yet for building that public-private partnership to make this work. I don't think we are serious enough yet about, it's not the government and the commercial sector. This is our country. This is us. The commercial sector is our country. It's our economy. The schools grow our people. This is all part of us. We can't let that go.
So you're implying government is almost more efficient in cyber than the business community. Government is more prepared than the business. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would be, the government is further along and they have the capabilities to defend it. The government will do really good in defending the Defense Department, parts of the State Department, parts of the intel community. The rest of the government agencies have the same problems. They need to figure out how to bring those in. I think more critical than that is taking care of the critical infrastructure. Step one, what do we need for continuity of the government? What is it that we would need if an attack went on Taiwan? And, my personal belief is that if Putin is successful in getting half of Ukraine, and there's very little for him to be held accountable for, Xi Jinping is going to think, it's okay for me to take Taiwan. And we got a problem. And we're not far from something like that happening. And so, as an intel officer, we always provided the president, secretary, chairman, here's what we see coming, here's what you should do, and then they would then take steps to take that on. I think we need to figure out, we don't compel the commercial sector to do things. I don't think we need to do that. I think if we said, would you all be interested in a secure world for cyber? And then you can have a play world over here, our kids, but over here, a secure world takes care of all your business, takes all that. Everybody'd say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I gave that to the Deputy Secretary in 2007 and 2008. He put it in an article. That's where it is right now, still in that article. So that's what we should have done.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Yeah. The question is about talent and people. So the few hackers I know, they hate roots, they don't like discipline, but they're very good in cyber technology. So how is the Cyber Command attracting people that have different cultural values than traditionally from the government or the armed forces?
I was going to say pizza, but actually, it's interesting. At NSA, we had 22,000 applicants for 2,000 jobs. Best math, best cyber, best people in the world all came in. But I agree with you that there are some tremendous people on the outside. They don't all need to be in government. What I found has been very useful in talking to some of those. So they say, yeah, I don't want to, President Bush would say, the guy with the earring, remember that guy with the earring and the nose ring? That's the guy I want to talk to. He's the one that knows the most. Well, actually not, but that typifies what people would think about a cyber. The thing that most impressed me in cyber offensive operators are people who went through training. You know, they're really good, they know how to do the keyboard, they know what all these tools are, they can do in Python, they can go all and they do all that. Then you bring them in to the real world, and then they start to see what they could do. And in every case, the offensive operators found out that, wow, there is so much more going on. They tell their friends, this is great, we ought to do it. You might not like all of it, but you can be a civilian operator. That means you don't have to do the PT test, you don't have to do the things in the military, or you can be a military operator and do both. I think from my times there, we were very good on attracting the talent. I used to go to Black Hat and DEF CON and talk to all the people. Just tell them, hey, you think, who's the best here? Who's the best? Everybody raise their hand. The best guys we went and had win the DEF CON and the Black Hat thing were 4 former operators. So we just got to keep doing it and give people access to it.
First of all, thank you for being here and thank you for your service. But as a Miami student looking to gain new information, I was hoping you would share with us a time where you made a mistake in your professional career and then what you learned from that mistake going forward.
Wow, so many choices. Well, one of them was don't tease Rumsfeld, which I did. It's a true story. I went in and I said, we had just done this really great, the president, and he said, you need to rebuild NSA. That's your first job there. I said, I get to do it? He said, yeah. So we went off, we came up with this great thing, and I sat down with Rumsfeld and said, 6 months later, would a 10% increase in improvement a year be good? And he sat there and thought. And then I waited for him I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, I meant 10 times. And he started to turn red. And I thought, he's either going to pop or kill me. So I quickly walked through it. What I learned is don't tease Rumsfeld. Some people have a great sense of humor. The president did. He had a great sense of humor in those areas. I think what I've seen in the difference between the military and the commercial sector, when I looked at somebody in the eye and said, when are you going to have this done and are you going to do it, they would tell me exactly what they're going to do or come back and tell me why they couldn't meet that. In the commercial sector, I get this, we're going to do that. We got you covered. I thought that was going to be today. Don't worry, we got it, mañana. I'm learning all these words. And, so it's not I find there are a lot of people that are willing to just do it. Now, there are some very good people in business too, don't get me wrong. But I found that to be one of the things that I've found difficult to deal with. I think the most important thing is leadership. Whether you have 5 people working for you or 10,000 or 100,000. It's leadership. And I'm going to give a leadership story if I might. President Bush was going to, came up to NSA, and I asked the Secret Service, do I get in his car or do I get in my car? What happens? He goes, General, if the President tells you get in his car, get in his car. If he doesn't, get in your car. So that's pretty good. I figured that out. So President Bush lands in his helicopter. I salute him, and he goes walking by. He walks real fast. He's like, welcome to Fort Meade, Mr. President. He goes, General, get in the car. We got to talk. So I get in the car. He says, 2 issues we got to talk about. First, they tell me you have too many bosses. We're going to fix that right now. And I thought, danger, Will Robinson. I have 7 bosses. The President, the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, Director of National Intelligence, Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intel, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Commander of STRATCOM. All of them outrank me. Who do you throw under the bus and live the next day? Actually, all of them were good for me to work with, and if I needed help, I could reach out to any. I reached out to the Vice President, went right by everybody and said I need $4 billion for something, and I was able to do that. He said, okay. So I said, I'm good, Mr. President. He said, okay, but if that's ever a problem, we'll fix it. This next problem, the terrorist surveillance program, you probably read about that, had been made public by the New York Times. Oh, by the way, the same program that Snowden would leak 7 years later. People forgot. Well, they already leaked that once. Everybody says, well, this is new. No, it's the same program. He goes, General, it's going to be really bad. Here's the deal. You defend the country, I'll take the heat. He did. He went up, we did a press conference. He did a press conference. He had Cheney, myself, McConnell, and Hadley standing behind him. And he told the American people this was a program that he had put in place to stop terrorist activities in the U.S., and it was successful, and it did. He took the heat that shut it down. It was the greatest act of leadership. Without any regard for his political welfare, he did what was right. When you think about being a leader, that's the most important thing that I would say. When you're in charge, you're responsible. When somebody wants to, when Congress found out about one of the things that NSA had done wrong, I had 2 guys that made a mistake. And we were in front of a very hostile Congress in a classified environment, and Congresswoman Eshoo stands up and says, General, somebody should hang from this. Who did this, and who should we hang? The 2 guys sitting behind me are the ones who did it, and I thought, whoa, they're probably thinking, we're going to die. And I said, Congresswoman, it's my responsibility. You want to fire somebody? Fire me. I'm responsible. I couldn't have thrown coffee on her and got a bigger response. She was like, I've never heard that. I've never heard anybody accept accountability. I have no more questions. She sat down, and the next 5 people didn't. I said, dang, I should have done that 2 years ago. So I do think that's one of the most important things that I learned.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I have the
You have to speak closer to the microphone.
the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. voice problem. I also have that. I have a question about trade routes. The Caspian trade route, the unholy alliance between Iran and Putin versus Biden's India, Australia, Israel, Saudi, EU, southern trade route. To what extent was October 7th, in your opinion, predicated on Putin and Iran trying to disrupt this trade route plan? Thank you.
For what kind of trade?
International trade route, the Caspian northern trade route versus Biden's, he's got a name for it, or southern trade route.
Well,
Predicated on the Saudis and Israel normalizing, which they were just about to do 3 days after October
So I'm not familiar with all the trade routes. Let me start there. Let's say that what we do look at is how they move troops, how they move equipment, how the IRGC CODS force, as an example, moves weapons into positions either in Syria, Iraq, or around through Sudan to attack Israel, and how those are countered. So we do see that. That is shared, that movement of equipment and movement of personnel. There's also the drug trade routes that a lot of people, the DEA and others are all over. I think that's a very tough area when you're talking Afghanistan and the surrounding regions, just because of the terrain. I've been there probably 20 times, and it is really tough to track people and stuff in those areas. So I'm not sure I'm answering your questions, but there is a lot of work that goes after tracking the movement of material and individuals, which is how we captured or took down bin Laden. Okay, so there's some recent press on that, and it was tracking the people who got to him. So that's something that the analysts do. They spent 9 years, they got him.
So Dean, why don't we take one more question and then you summarize where we are.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, last question.
I know that social engineering has been a major part of cybersecurity in the past. I was just wondering how AI's involvement has been changing that.
Well, for sure, you can see right now the way they use these social networks. I'll give you an example. TikTok. If you look at TikTok, the issue that comes out is the way they run the algorithms. They can ensure that only certain facts come or are allowed to go through when you do a search. So if you wanted something on Tiananmen Square, you're only going to get historical stuff about how great a place that is. Or the Uyghurs, you're not going to see stuff on that. So they can shape and balance the message and stuff that goes on. Those social platforms are based on algorithms and analytics that are created by the designers of those. Social media has a lot of things like that in it that allows them to weigh the information. Most prevalent over the last year and a half has been the anti-Semitic portions done by China, Russia, through Iran, Hamas, and all that to create turmoil within the US. There's a great article out on that as well that shows all the players and where they come from in China, where they come from in Russia, and how they impact those social media networks to create tension. A story in Ukraine, true story. There was propaganda on social media that said a Ukrainian family killed a Russian boy, put him on stuck a big hole through him, and put him in the yard of his parents. It enraged the Russian population in Ukraine. When you went to that place, it wasn't a Russian home. There was no boy there. It was a Ukrainian home, people that lived there. But it was started by social media to spread false rumors. And that's something that we've got to really track as the disinformation and things go in there.
Okay, quick question, like a last question. Adam, please.
Hello? Okay. General, thank you for being here. This has been so interesting. As we move toward a presidential election and we look at our adversaries, how do we, during that period of time, evaluate the risks? Do our enemies look at, hey, during this period of time there could be transition between administrations? Do they try to take advantage of that? And also, during this period of discourse, do you think that it has in any way impacted our ability to defend us as a country?
To what is the country?
that the discourse that we're seeing internally within our country, has it impacted our ability to defend us? Has it impacted the internal workings at all?
Yeah, I think first, it's absolutely ongoing. It is absolutely ongoing, something that Russia, China, and others want to do to create tension. And it's polarized us, and we've got to get out in front of it. What the government can do is go after those that are attacking on the election. They do a pretty good job on that. So you're going to see that U.S. Cyber Command has been tasked to ensure the security of the elections. And they're doing a great job on that. But it doesn't solve the problem that you have, because disinformation isn't just on the elections, it's on over here. It's about creating turmoil, about starting something in a university when most of the people that are in that don't even go to the university. And it's creating tensions, and we've got to get out in front of the social media platforms and help stabilize this. And I think the second part is our own news at times is so polarized that you read an article and you get two different views about what happened. You think, well, there's the CNN and there's the Fox News, and they're both, same people went to this thing and came away with two different stories. So I don't know how you solve that problem. I do know that we have those from other countries that are trying to take that polarization and make it hurt our nation. After this election, I think as a country we need to sit down and say, how do we solve those problems? We've got to get a country that works together. I was in a meeting with Ted Stevens and Danny Inouye. 1997, I was an Army major at the time in charge of a sensitive program. We needed congressional help. I talked to Senator Stevens and told him what we needed. Yeah, Republican
and a Democrat.
Republican and Democrat. And Ted Stevens goes, we can solve, Danny, we can solve this. Like that, they did. They worked together. That's what makes our country great. We got to get back to that and figure out then how to force the media to help us in that regard.
Well, very impressive conversation, and I'd like to thank you for joining us, and also thank the ambassadors, Sue and Charles Cobb, for being here. And I'd like to not summarize in the interest of time, but I'd like to ask you a very tough question. I had many questions about exciting things and critical infrastructure and the budgets and spending and public and private, but we can discuss them over drinks. That was a joke. And, but in all seriousness, we were in a lecture about leadership, and actually I got a very valuable lesson about leadership. I mean, your testimony to Congress and taking responsibility. That was a very noble thing of you to do, to protect your people, and actually resonates with a lesson about leadership that I learned from late Colin Powell. And he said, I was in the military for many years, and what he thought the test of leadership was not about people following you and doing great things, but your people feeling that they follow you not because they have to, but not because they need to do that, but because they're eager to do that. So the test of leadership is that people want to be after you because of your vision, of the great things you do. So for a military person, that your soldiers have to follow you, to say that my test of leadership is that they are eager to follow me, that was a great test of leadership, a great lesson of leadership. So since we are in a leadership lecture, and you already gave us one lesson of leadership, there's one lesson of leadership that you're going to give to university students, what would that be in 30 seconds?
Well, I think what I found the most valuable, so Colin Powell was also a mentor for me.
Yes.
You need to be, I joke about not being a technical person, but my thought was if I want to have the people at NSA follow me, They need to know I'm willing to do the work that we're asking them to do, math, engineering, science, and get into the details of it. Become the best I could be in each of those areas. Work hard at it. They know that I'm working hard. They know I'm studying it, I'm working it, I'm asking all the questions. I go around and ask them. I think doing that and then coming down and saying, so why are we doing this? Why not this? Or can you meet me in this thing? I want to know about how that cryptologic sequence works. And they think, nobody ever asked me that question. But get into the details of it, no matter what that is. If it's business, about all the things. But the more you know about the business, the more you know about it, the more your people will say, he's here for us.
That's a great lesson. I mean, to be a leader, I mean, you have to actually put the work, put the knowledge, the learning, the hard work, and people have to trust you. And in having the knowledge and the hard work and dedication. So that's a great lesson of leadership. So I'd like to thank you sincerely for your service, first and foremost. So thank you very much for the wise words on everything, but definitely on leadership. That's a great lesson. And that's where you got the 4 master's degrees. That's very, very impressive. That shows not just courage and leadership. So we're very proud of you. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.